Okay.
Right, today we are joined by Andy Bounds, communications guru extraordinaire, and I've called him guru because I know that he really doesn't want to be called guru.
I once heard someone say that people only call you a guru because they don't know how to spell charlatan, so I thought that was probably fair enough.
And that's an introduction and a half, but by way of a proper introduction, I believe Drayton Bird referred to you as somebody who taught him more about communications than somebody who had taught 2 US presidents.
That's right, yeah.
Which is not bad.
Yeah, that was okay.
So you must be a really good communicator. I know you are. So,
yeah, sorry, we just keep interrupting here. So you can tell that we're making this up as we go along. So yeah, with communication, if you are successful in life, you have to be good at communicating, I find. And if you're not successful in life, you're probably not very good at communicating. It's that pivotal. Because the only time communication isn't relevant is when you're sat on your own, at a desk on your own, and you think of something on your own that you don't tell anybody about ever. Well, that never happens. You know, so everything, it manifests itself with communication, whether it's digital or whether it's just talking or whatever.
That's the bit that I find really interesting. Often interesting stuff, particularly these days, is happening at the interface between the disciplines. And when somebody talks to us about calls to action, and, I have conversations with our clients regularly about calls to action, where they should be, how big they should be, whether it should be a button or a statement or, what's the medium, is it in an email? And often they're thinking about the sort of, the technical stuff, the minutiae of where it is in that sort of thing. You deal regularly though and help customers with their calls to action, but they perhaps are closer to the purpose, and I find that sort of side of things really interesting.
Okay, so let me just quickly run through this and then we'll have a look at how it would manifest itself in a digital format. Generally, there's a golden rule with communication, and this is the first thing I teach all my clients, and I've been doing this for like 15 years, and every single client I've worked with ever, I always start with this, because most people get it wrong. If you ask most people what communication's about, they say it's about, the communication. And I totally and utterly disagree with that. The thing that's important with communication is what happens after it. So much as Phil and I would love you to love this video, is it useful or not? Well, it depends what you do when we get to the end of it. Do you press pause and use something you hear, or do you press pause and say, well, I like that? So corporate people use the word call to action. I might use the word do, like what do you want people to do as a result. So if we take it outside digital first, and then we'll put it back in. So, when you go to a meeting and it's rubbish, well, very often the meeting agenda has as a final agenda item any other business. So I say any other business and you spout off your business, I spout off mine, and then we leave the room and no one does anything. So there's no call to action, no one does anything. If you have a very simple word, if you cross out any other business and put actions arising, then it means at the end of every meeting we say, right, so what are our actions arising? So instead of us spouting on about anything, we say, well, I'll do this and you'll do this, and at least the meeting now had a point. It's the same if you do a presentation, the final slide should say, now you've heard me, please can I ask you to do this? Of course, final slides never say this. Final slides say, thank you, and then the audience say, you're welcome, now get out. So nobody really knows how to finish communication properly. Now, from a digital point of view, say from a website point of view, when you're doing the website, it's very easy to think the thing that matters about the website is the content of the website. And you go, no, what matters is when someone's read it, what do they do? Do they get in contact with you? Do they ring you up? Do they buy something? Do they forward something? I mean, how would you know your website had worked? Well, it's not whether people like it or not, it's what they do when they've read it. And so I'm really interested in your views on this, because you talk about some things as second nature, about where you put your buttons and what colour they go. I don't know anything about that space. I just know there should be something on there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare that you have a website which doesn't have or wouldn't benefit from calls to action. Usually people want the viewer to do something. Not always, but usually. And in those circumstances, they need some form of a call to action. And it depends on purpose. So with very many things in all communications, but absolutely the case in digital communications, what is the purpose of the website? And that relates directly to afters, which are covered in detail in Andy's book, The Jelly Effect. Very good. I'd recommend that if you have not read it. Calls to action, though, depends on what you want to happen, the purpose. So sometimes, let's say we're selling dog leads. That's a fairly easy one. Providing somebody has a need for a dog lead, I can't imagine that they would spend much time on the website which sells dog leads if they didn't need a dog lead. You never know, there are all sorts of people out there in the world, but most of the people who are doing that and spend any time looking at the various different product pages will have some interest in dog leads. What's the difference though between those guys who do and don't purchase? It might be that the product is wrong, the price point is wrong, but what will make a difference for those people who are qualified, who are ready to buy that product, is if you give them a really good call to action. And there's a few ways you can do it. There's nothing wrong with using different kinds of calls to action, so long as you are making the suggestion that you should buy this dog lead, because often that's a very, very effective way of getting them to buy this dog lead. Don't overdo it. Obviously your personality, the personality of your website, shouldn't conflict with the values underpinning it, but for sure the difference between making that call to action and not making it is percentage points in conversion.
And it's so interesting, it sounds so obvious, but if you want some simple takeaways, like one thing you can do after watching this video, press pause and have a look at some of your communications to make sure there's a clear call to action. So I said before about meetings, have a look at your most recent meeting agenda. What was the final agenda item? Was it any other business, talking shop, or was it actions arising, call to action? Have a look at the homepage of your website. Is it clear what people should do when they've read it? Have a look at your most recent slide set. Have a look at the final slide. Does it say thank you or does it say next steps? Here's a belter actually. If you write proposals, the single biggest problem with proposal I find, apart from the fact they're often boring, is the very last section just says thank you very much, goodbye. What it should say is the call to action: to accept this proposal and for it to form an agreement between us, please hit reply and. In other words, you have to tell the customer how to accept the proposal, otherwise even if they love it, they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything.
It's so easy to assume that they know that, but apart from the fact that it's just polite to make it easy for them, it makes such a difference in terms of numbers. A good way to sort of think about this is when you're on the receiving end of it, and I'm sure you do this all the time, I know I do, you're sort of checking your own outbound communications as well, but when you receive them, sort of comparing the good ones, and often distilling sort of the pure action and advice from the chaos. There's a big value add in that throughout business, just removing extraneous, simplifying it down, helping people make good decisions, and that's part of being a courteous business partner for somebody in selling well, it seems to me.
Yeah, and nobody has any problem with you doing it, because once you start realising communication is all about the do, it's not about the communication. So for example, one of the things that I heard one of my customers did the other day, which I thought was brilliant, is she used to call a meeting. So she called it a meeting, so everybody thinks, well, that's 1 hour and it's a meeting. But she started changing the word to make it more do focused. So now she gets a team together and says, right everyone, we need a swift decision on this, 10 minutes and we're done. And so people come knowing it's a decision-making thing. It's not a meeting, which is a talking shop. So it's always so nobody minds that. The people who go to that have got a 10-minute meeting instead of an hour rant, but it's fine.
And to borrow your words, who wants to spend more time in meetings?
Yeah.
Nope.
Said nobody ever.
Said nobody ever. And it's a really good one. We've actually, happy to share, relatively recently implemented one of your bits of advice. I think it's from one of your tips. And if you haven't subscribed to Andy Bounds Tuesday Tips, I would definitely look it up because it's certainly worthwhile. But we've got quite a lot out of this where rather than just calling something in the diary meeting and putting the name of the company, we're sort of applying a new format where the first thing to put in is our name, because if we share the meeting request, the person who's receiving it doesn't necessarily know it's with Glow. The second thing is their company name, and then the third thing is the purpose of the meeting, ideally with the desired outcome. And it might mean 2 or 3 more words, but there's room for it. It's digital, hey. And one of the benefits I wasn't expecting is it actually sharpens up our focus about what we want to get out of it. It's so easy to do. It's just like you put it through the foot bath of purpose. And by doing that, by putting it through that, you actually get more focus. So you're more focused before you sit down, and it's had the same effect. I suspect strongly that the person who's coming to the meeting from the other side is also really clear on the purpose, and it just helps. You can reiterate it in the meeting, but we've been doing that, and I find that really useful. Yeah,
there's two or three benefits. Firstly, people don't cancel the meeting at the last minute because they understand the purpose of it. Secondly, everyone comes knowing what the outcome is. Thirdly, if you use an outcome verb like we're looking to agree this or to decide actions, then you tend to get agreement or actions. If you put an input verb, we're going to discuss this and discuss that, you just end up discussing and nothing happens as a result. So you can see, couldn't you, if you had an email or a meeting request from Phil and it said, Glow and your company name, to agree the way forward with X. Well, you turn up to that, don't you? And you turn up on time, and as soon as agreement's finished, the meeting finishes, you're not going to talk for an hour once the agreement's done, so everything's faster.
So I suppose in conclusion, it might be a difficult one, but hey, let's just take it on. It's just new stuff. That thinking being evident, what are the digital calls to action where perhaps a bit more context, because it strikes me that the context of what you're going to see next is actually the interesting bit. So the button that says add to basket, that's sort of like the obvious point in case one, but the other calls to action that we see in websites, presumably it's of benefit if we help people understand what happens next. I mean, Amazon are very good at giving you the sort of where you are in the buying process and stepping back in the chain. And before they did that, because I'm perilously thought old enough to remember when Amazon hadn't made a profit and hadn't actually done all of the split testing to figure out that that's a really good way of helping people. I wonder what calls to action that there are on websites where we can give people more context about what happens next.
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, there's 2 or 3 things I find quite helpful here. Firstly, have a call to action. So look at your website. If there isn't one, that's why they're not acting, folks, because there's no call to action.
Good place to start.
Yeah, not bad. And then I tend to find with the action, there's something you can put above it and something you put below it. The thing you put above it is the benefit to them of doing the action. So Amazon say things like, to get this at your doorstep tomorrow, comma, so the benefit first, click here. And then the thing that goes underneath it is what Amazon will do with it. So to get it tomorrow, click here to buy, and then we'll put it in the post for you. So it's almost like benefit, action, and then what you'll do. So at the bottom of, say, the proposal example, you might say, so we can get cracking quickly, please can you reply to this proposal, and then I'll schedule the first meeting and we'll start.
Really good, clear advice from Andy there. So I quite like that. If it were, it might be a contact us form, it might be a buy this dog lead button, it might be a respond to something in an email, but giving people the context and a bit more information about what happens next, what we will do, and what the benefit to them is will make a big deal. It's probably worth also saying colour and size and positioning makes a difference. Digital's great at split testing that. There's a thing called split testing. Let's test 2 versions of the button. Should it be big or small? Should it be yellow or black? And Amazon have been kings of this for a very long time indeed. Much of what you see in their sales process online has been split tested to the nth degree. It's Darwinian. The only things which exist are the things which work. There are some great tools that allow us to do split testing of that type, or even multivariate testing, test lots of different candidates and find which ones work. So in combining those techniques with the ones which Andy has talked about, that might be for those amongst you who are interested in calls to action and how to be better at them, that's a good place to look. So in terms of things to do next, Andy, simple, easy wins?
So first thing I do is I would review your most recent communication and just have a look at the end of it. Did you ask someone to do something? And if you did it have a benefit above and your action underneath? Have a look at your most recent proposal, have a look at your most recent slide set. But of course in the digital thing here, have a look at your website, see if the call to action's okay, and just speaking for Phil here, I hope this is okay. And if you're not quite sure, send him a link and say, what do you think? Absolutely.
These things are never finished, they're never perfect, there's no such thing as perfect. So in the spirit of constant improvement, I'd add on another one. I would have a look at some of the best e-commerce businesses. Amazon's an obvious one, but there are plenty of others. I'm sure you'll have favourites. They will do calls to action in a particular way. See if you can spot 3. See if you can decide what makes them good calls to action. And having that thinking on board, maybe take a look at your own calls to action. That may be fundamentally different businesses, but there may be things that apply between them. Just having a think will likely show you some things that you might do to improve.